Okay, this is the beginning of the finance meeting. It's starting at 7 o'clock. President is Frank Seminaro, Kevin McCullough, Dr. Otto, Andrew Basil. Sorry, what?
Just announced the date.
So it's January 23rd, 2013. Danielle Penza and Mark. I know, what's your last name? Boyer. Got it. My apologies, Mark.
Okay.
I haven't seen you that often, so
He's a force to be reckoned with yet to come.
Good thing, by the way, that they get
yeah.
Exactly.
Otherwise, I'd be calling you all the time.
You're flying under the radar right now, yeah.
All right, so we're gonna get this thing rolling. We don't have a whole lot to discuss to begin with. I do want to go over a couple of questions I had regarding the audit, even though that's been approved. There are some issues that were raised there I think we need to just sort of address. The first one is, what is our current debt balance, Danielle?
Through, I guess,
As
this month, it's $91,275,650.
Okay. All right. And where are we vis-a-vis the swap valuations? Out of the money, I know, but
Right. As of close of last Friday, it was $1,993,148.82 to get out of the swap.
well, that's closer than it had been in a little while.
Actually, it's up from what it had been. We were down actually in the 1.8 range back in the beginning of December.
Yeah. All right.
It's trending back
The other way.
Yeah.
Well, we'll see what happens with interest rates in the near future. Okay, one of the questions I had was, if you go to, what happened here? I had all the page numbers on this. Hold on one second. If you go to the audit, I don't know if anybody brought their copies with them, but if you go to like page, it's 26, 25.
Bring mine either.
Part of the notes, it says cash, note 2, cash and cash equivalents and investments. And it talks about custodial credit risk, which, and I'll just read it out loud for the minutes. Custodial credit risk is the risk that in the event of a bank failure, the government deposits may not be returned to it. The district does not have a policy for custodial risk. At June 30th, 2012, the carrying amount of the district's deposits was $1,888,031, and the bank balance was $1,927,599. Of the district's bank balance, $509,977 was covered by the FDIC insurance, and $1.4 million was exposed to custodial credit risk, as because it was uninsured and the collateral held by the depository agent was not in the district's name. So I guess I bring this up because actually I've seen this a lot with some of the third-party assets that we manage on our own businesses, where auditors are picking this up left and right now, and they're recommending that associations and municipalities start spreading their money out amongst different FDIC-insured lenders or banks. One thing that's new, I believe, with lenders now is that you can't have multiple accounts within one institution. Whereas before you could get FDIC insurance for each account. Now they just look at the aggregate and say, I don't care how many accounts you have, you're only getting the minimum amount of FDIC insurance. So what a lot of people are doing now is taking their funds and moving them amongst several different lending institutions to avoid that kind of risk. Do I think the risk is high? Not necessarily, but at the same time, 4 years ago we had bank failures left and right. And I remember back in the early 90s with the SNL bailout and the RTC takeover, there was bank failures left and right. So I think it's something that maybe we should address with a policy. And I just want to see what everybody's thoughts are on that. And if
What is the cap now? I'm sorry, what is it?
isn't it
4,000?
It's 250.
250? That's what I thought.
And,
250 cap.
See, I agree with that. I think you should spread some in other accounts. The only problem is how much and where.
Is there a negative to doing that other than the inconvenience?
Banks don't like it. They lose some of the depository and they lose the overnight money. So if, say you have it in $1 million in 4 different banks, that's probably the right thing to do. And Andrew, probably Andrew would say that. Problem is that one banks don't like that. They want you to, because there'll be no activity. You know what I mean? You're going to deposit $250,000 in bank X only to be protected, but you're not going to do anything with it. Why? You can't have, you know what I mean?
Well, a majority of our money, and Mark can correct me if I'm wrong, because since Mark's been here, I don't want to say have a better handle on the cash accounts, but the way that we're doing the function now is the way that it should have been done and that I wanted to get to since I got here, and we're finally there. That being said, most of our money is being kept with the Pennsylvania School District Liquid Asset Fund. We try as much as we can to not have a lot of money sitting at VIST and or National Penn.
Well, we're sweeping that now, right?
Well, National Penn was being
Correct.
swept while the taxes were going in. We stopped that January 1 because we don't have the real estate taxes are at lien. But yes, that was being swept in. Mark and I are on the same page. Even though interest rates aren't great, the interest rates for our max account at Liquid Asset is better than.
How much are they insured up to?
Well, they're not really included in the Act 72,
Okay.
which is my understanding. And if you look here in the audit, the auditors say that although that this organization's not registered with the Securities and Exchange Commission and not subject to the regulatory oversight, the funds act like money market mutual funds, and their objective is to maintain a stable net asset value of $1 per share. And they're nationally rated. And I believe their rating was AAA at the end of June.
But I guess my question again is, what happens if they go down? And there's no one backing them up, I guess? I'm just asking the question. I'm not
saying that
disagreeing
it's
with what
not
you're
going
doing.
to happen. I mean, I don't.
I'm just
I
asking the
have
question.
to believe that they have some kind of.
Okay.
I mean, I can get more information.
I mean, I'm not making a recommendation to start splitting up all the assets amongst different accounts at this time, but I'm just thinking that, obviously there is a risk there. I'm witnessing it in the private sector, and so, I'm just bringing it to our attention that we ought to be considering some sort of policy going forward. I don't know, maybe we can, as part of our insurance, you can buy a little extra coverage for that. I don't know if our insurers provide that type of coverage, or we take the risk because the rate of return that we're getting as part of the PSDLAF is high enough that we're willing to risk, I don't know, some sort of potential failure there. I just think it's something we need to discuss and have a recommendation or create a policy that we follow going forward. The other limits of risk here were credit risk. They mentioned that on page 26. The district has no investment policy that would limit its investment choices to certain credit ratings. Currently, we are investing in investments that have AAA ratings with Standard & Poor's. They mention here the PSDLAF fund and the PLGIT fund. I don't know what the second one is, but maybe we should have a policy that you don't invest in B-rated funds.
If you look at your policy, and this is not one that we've gotten to obviously in policy committee, but the one that I've actually looked at prior to this meeting. But when you pass your budget, within 3 months, we, primarily the business office, is
What
supposed
policy
to come,
number is that?
622. Says an annual review of the district's investment program shall be prepared by the business manager, reviewed by the finance committee, and submitted for board approval no later than 90 days after adoption of the annual budget.
I don't think we've ever done that.
So, be that as it may, we're finding that with a lot of policies. However, it does already build in for you what you're suggesting. The only thing that you might want to do is be more specific within that policy as to how you want to start divvying up the money.
And what
And that
you
could
want
be-
presented within those 90 days.
And that could be-
Quite honestly, investment-wise, who we invest with is PSDLAF, which is the Liquid Asset Fund. If you look at your monthly board reports and the statement that we attach, you'll see that we have certain CDs, I want to say they're like $245,000 pledged in our name at different institutions, and then we're in a pooled fund as well. So that's primarily where we do our investments with.
Yeah, I guess, and I don't know, so what sort of struck me with this is, a number of years ago, a lot of municipalities engaged in derivatives, and we ourselves have a derivative, not to the exposure that some towns and school districts did, where they got walloped.
Some countries.
Yeah, I mean, I'm trying to think of.
I think it's like Greece.
Allentown had a huge problem with this, or Lehigh Valley or something like that. A huge problem with this, and I don't know what the credit ratings were of those derivative products, but if there was a policy that said we're not going to invest in some sort of investment that has a risk of less than this, it may have barred certainly those municipalities from participating in those types of investments, and maybe even ourselves. So I bring that up as well, is that maybe we need to have a credit risk policy that just simply states, as opposed to, hey, we're going to do some sort of annual review.
Right.
That still doesn't stop people from going forward with that. You can sit there and say, well, we're going to invest in this stuff, and that's what we're
Well,
going to do.
what my suggestion was, as we revise this policy, that you expand it. You already had this.
Yeah, no, this is I guess a finance committee discussion about
Right.
maybe a policy recommendation.
I can certainly ask Linda, the auditor, if she has recommendations on an updated policy. Obviously, this policy was from 2000, so it obviously has not been looked at in
This was
13
probably
years now.
passed.
I think that's probably correct, yeah.
That was probably passed about the time there was that big scam that involved what was it, Blackwood or not Blackwood? Some golf course and investments, and there's a whole big scandal in Berks County. And I think districts must have taken a look at that. People lost their shirts for a little while.
Okay, and in dovetail, that was this interest rate risk. This says that the district does have a formal investment policy that limits investment maturities as a means of managing its exposure to fair value losses arising from increasing interest rates.
It's in that 622.
I didn't know, first of all, what was the policy? You're telling me that's policy 622. And what is it?
It just states that. It just says the risk that the market value of securities will fall due to the changes in general interest rates. It doesn't really.
Well, obviously we didn't follow that either. We're going to came to the derivative product that we're in, right? I mean, that was a bet using interest rates as a hedge.
Sorry, that was prior to me.
Yeah, no, I'm
I
not.
can't answer that question.
I'm not pointing fingers. I'm just saying that if the district went that way once before, 10 years from now, the district could go that way again, right? I mean, people don't tend to learn from their mistakes unless you ingrain some kind of, procedure that outlasts, one board to the next and one administration to the next. So you avoid those pitfalls going forward. Or at least it raises the question, if people are following the policies. You got to follow the policies to begin with. But so if that's the policy and just says, hey, we need to be mindful of it, maybe again we need to have some sort of specific numbers in there, or credit rating that's involved with interest rates, or just down and out bar certain types of
Yeah,
investments.
the policy is very general.
It was probably one of those canned.
Yeah.
Correct.
So
We need it for auditors and
So to the degree that I don't know whether PASBA has some policies out there we can look at, but I mean, I guess from the finance committee's perspective, if there's a consensus that we're going to kind of push that forward, then I think the policy committee has enough on its plate for the time being that we can do that here. Although Frank and I are policy committee.
Can you ask?
It's just a different night, right?
And then Monica.
And Monica, right?
Can you ask the auditor what their recommendation would be about spreading out our money in different institutions? And ask her what are other school districts doing now? Just out of curiosity, what are they doing? And or you know what I mean? Even
Well, I would ask not even just municipalities, and I mean, is the hospital subject to the same
No, they're
investment
private
regulations?
organizations.
So you wouldn't have the same.
Again, I don't work for the hospital.
Well, you work near the hospital.
Yeah, I know. I'm saying I don't work. I don't want
The hospitals are private businesses.
Oh, so they're not subject. Okay.
No, they're nonprofit.
So, and the last one is concentration of credit risk, and this is kind of, I guess, the all the eggs in one basket. The district has no limit on the amount the district may invest in any one issuer, and no investment subject to concentration of credit risk exceed the 5% threshold. I'm not sure what that means, to exceed the 5% threshold.
Well, were these comments by the auditor
Yes.
couched as recommendations? Or
No, they're just stating a
just
fact.
facts?
You don't
And quite
have this.
honestly,
You don't
not
have
that it makes it right. I did go out on several district websites and look at their audits today, and many of them,
Say the
whether
same.
it was the same auditor or a different auditor, pretty much say the exact same thing.
Yeah.
Like I said, right, wrong,
Gatsby
not that that's right, but
Some of
it's not like
Gatsby,
we're,
some of it's
We're the only ones.
right.
And some of the auditors, I mean, yeah.
And it's not just these guys, it was
No, it's
other
protecting, you know,
auditors.
it's part of
Well,
Gatsby and protecting.
Again, the risk may not be that great. You know, ultimately, it comes down to the board making an investment decision at the time it makes the decision, whether or not it decides it's going to follow its own policies or not when it does that. I guess I'm just bringing it up that we don't have a formal policy. And, you know, what was it, Kevin, in like 2005, was it, where we invested with that one investment professional and he lost $17 million? I mean,
Oh, that was before that. That was even
90
before- That was before me. That's one of the reasons why.
I think that's why this policy.
That part of that was before me. That's actually, we started to get it back right when I got on.
that had been like in the early 2000s. then.
Well, no, wait, I got on. It was right in the late 90s, 2000 maybe, because I got on, I don't even know when I started, 2001. And they just started getting their money back
Right.
in when I got on the board.
But it was a lot of money with
It
one
was
guy.
$17 million.
Yeah.
Spread out over what, about 10 school districts?
Yeah, I believe it was about 10. They invested, long and short of Boone invested $17 million in somebody, and basically it was almost gone. And so, and the board really did nothing wrong, but it was the guy, it was a bad investment. And they recovered, I think, all but like 150,000, I think we got back. But it took a long process.
Right.
So, yeah, I would never want that to happen again. So either you spread it or.
Or you say, hey, look, we're only going to limit X number of dollars to
Yeah,
be invested
$4
with
million or whatever.
one.
Even $4 million loss is bad, but it was really high.
Yeah.
It was $17 million.
So, again, I'm not setting a dollar figure, but just sort of throwing it out there that maybe we need a policy that maybe it's a percentage of the total assets that we have. You can invest no more than X percent with any particular issuer. I mean, here they talk about no investment subject to concentration or credit risk exceed the 5% threshold. I'm assuming that's what they're referring to. But you know, we don't obviously have any kind of policy whatsoever. So I don't know if the auditor has a recommendation or if PASBA has a policy or recommendation or the state does, but RBC Capital, I mean, I don't know. Different folks that we talk to. So those were the questions I had with that. And the only other thing I had a question on was 339, where it said we entered into a lease agreement in 2011 for 18 copiers, and the total expense for the year was $447,000.
No, she said that was a typo. It should be 47,490.
I hope so.
47. That's what I thought.
Yeah, that's what she said.
So,
She said
are they
that
gonna
was correct.
revise
It was a
this?
typo. I doubt it.
I think they should.
Well, it's
But,
not correct.
I
So
mean-
even if they just change page 39, I mean, we got this thing posted on the. Not that people. Maybe I'm the only one that reads these things,
No,
but
it should be.
It-
should
You
be
gotta change
revised.
that.
Right.
yeah,
Come
you
on,
can,
do it.
kind of a-
I mean, I
The
asked,
reason.
I asked if it was a
Wait,
typo, and I
first
got
of all-
yes, but I didn't get. We'll send out.
No,
a
the reason
revision.
why I think you have to have it changed is because.
It's official record.
Well, then
yeah,
that's not
no,
the
no,
only
that's-
one
no,
because
that's
I
true,
found
but-
another change.
But
That's
the
not right.
point
Where's
is,
that?
So
we're going to answer the question
33.
every time for the next year. Someone's going to keep saying, "Are you kidding me? You spent $500,000 on leases."
would you see?
And every time we're going to have to repeat ourselves.
Is it a financial mistake or something else?
Yeah.
The other
yeah,
issue?
it's about the debt. This number should actually match your debt.
I didn't catch that.
And well, you wouldn't see. I know that if you add these up, it's not right.
Okay.
Well,
So
just add- just
that's
find out.
page
33
33.
is not correct.
33 isn't correct. The total general long-term debt should be around 93 million. It's represented as
The
91.
first 1, 2, 3, 4 under total general long-term debt. The first 4 totals are not right.
And so that's
think we
not
should get
right,
them to
and
change it.
39 isn't right. So,
I will call her tomorrow.
yeah, I mean, they got to revise this thing and reissue it.
Or
So,
every time somebody asks us Send it to
And
the-
quite frankly, we as a board should approve the revised version and
Right,
then,
exactly.
and then post it so that
It's just a
we're,
matter of, following the right procedures that were done.
okay? All right, that's what I had with that. Okay, what else do you have there? Okay, so budget was PFM mean?
That's
The,
that
budget
budget model
modeling.
that was.
Oh, okay, so look, it sort of came to me backhand channels that, apparently, we or I wasn't doing enough to address this issue of multi-year budgets and things of that nature. So, I guess I just wanted to revisit this issue. We thought we'd talk about it again this spring. It's not quite the spring, but, how are you guys coming along, Mark, and specifically you, in, getting up to speed with the district and the budget and the numbers and that sort of thing to...
Well, last week we started doing budget projections for the fund balance, projected fund balance at the end of the year.
Mhm.
So Danielle kind of gave some of it to me. So I'm working on that now. It's kind of right now a slow process because I'm still not acclimated to all of the nuances of the district, but it's going pretty well. We should have probably some sort of number maybe by the end of the week.
Okay.
And then start the ball rolling there. We're kind of, like Danielle mentioned earlier, we kind of corrected how we're accounting for the cash now. Not that we misaccounted anything, just how we are doing the accounting for the cash and which bucket it's allocated in. Strictly accounting records. So that took a little bit of time to get that straightened out, and then kind of had to reorganize how we do our bank reconciliations to that. So it's going well. As far as giving any type of time frame as when we can start a 5-year projection or 3-year projection.
Or I guess I'm just thinking of, how you doing in terms of getting up to speed and getting your feet wet with the
Oh,
district,
it's going great.
and when do you guys feel as though this is an issue we can sit down and seriously consider?
Well, we had talked actually about the PFM model, and when Jason Brockman was out here, now that Mark sees a little bit from starting to work on the projections, how the contract is and how it's not just a 4% increase or a 3% increase across the board, that there's all those nuances.
Mm-hmm.
We talk that we would like, before we say yes, we endorse this or yes, we want to use this, we would like to have Jason out to meet with just us and say, okay, this is how we are. This is what we need. Can you do it?
Mm-hmm.
Why should we invest in it, pay for it, if they can't do that, if they can't do our nuances? So that's kind of where we were with that.
Well, I would agree with that. I mean, that's what Frank
I
said.
don't know if you were here, Kevin, when he did his presentation. It's basically a series of spreadsheets, worksheets that have all the logic built into them, so they populate the correct cells and do everything they do. But behind that, there's no real magic, But I'm not saying it's less than it is. It's good. It's very valuable. But the conclusion we came to was that let Mark and Danielle get their hands around, because Mark is really new then. Get their hands around it for at least another 6-7 months.
Sure.
And then we'll have them back and try to look at this model again. And I think the more that these guys go through the numbers, the more they start to understand what that model does.
And see, with Mark here, he's able to help me, I think, going to be able to help us get to where we want to be, where I'm not going to be so bogged down to, I don't want to say to doing everything,
Well, no, that's
but
right. That was our whole
No,
discussion.
it is.
Our whole discussion was it needs focus. There's no sense getting him to get that model in place here if no one can focus on the model.
Well, that's
It's
what
just gonna
Frank's
slow
point
down.
was. It doesn't do us any good to buy the tool if no one's going to use the tool.
Exactly. No, I agree with that.
That's where we left it. And so I was just trying to think, I got some blowback in the last 4 weeks about, why weren't we or you, Andrew Basil, doing enough to promote a multi-year budget, which I found amazing that I was getting criticized for that. But all the same, I just figured, well, let's just revisit where you guys are, and if you've had a chance to kind of look at that and say, well, look, this model doesn't quite. It's a round peg going into a square hole. let's, if you guys think maybe in 3 weeks, invite this guy back out again, where you guys just meet with him and say, hey, look, here are our specific needs. Can you cater the model to meet our needs? If he says yes, then say, hey, look, run up a demo for us.
And a price.
And,
Well,
and
give
then,
us
But that's a
price
huge
already.
undertaking.
But we have the price.
Yeah, he gave us a price already, and
Doing a 5-year projection,
Really,
you,
it's
you got to
cheap.
get your feet wet because that's a huge undertaking.
Well, and I just want to say for the record, just so it's on record, when I first started here, I did do a 5-year.
She did.
So I
Absolutely.
just want that on the record, okay?
I have it.
Like you said, it may have been way out of the ballpark now with, we didn't know what was going to happen with a lot, but it was done at one time, and
Well,
I could not keep it up
okay.
while I was
no,
trying
look,
to
do
do
Dave-
we're
everything.
not, I'm not casting stones
You don't
anywhere.
understand.
We had a 3-year perfect storm.
totally understand.
You have to do the main job, which is keep the district day-to-day operations. Everybody wants that thing, but that's
But
But you
at
know
the end of the
what?
day, the beauty of this model is they've already done the heavy lifting for us.
Right.
Correct.
And so it's just a matter of putting the inputs in year one, and then everything flows
Tweaking
through.
and
And we,
The
It does,
tweaking
but I
is-
think what my assessment of it is, you're right, Andrew, I don't disagree. My assessment is, it's going to take somebody a good month or two
Yes.
to learn that model, and then they'll have all the automation at their fingertips. But you can't be oblivious to what it does and still.
And I want to be
Still feel
involved.
good
I want to
about it.
be heavily involved, but I don't know how I mean, we haven't talked. There's certain aspects of things that I kind of saw him doing, but I think I excel more at it, where he excels at other things. So things might shift, and that projection side might be kind of his baby, where he.
That's just part of being
you
a
know,
team.
I mean, it's just, and that's right. We're kind of playing off of each other. We're still learning.
Right, so when were
each
you
other.
thinking of having them back and asking them?
Well,
those
honestly,
questions?
we just started. We talked about. Was it this week or last week? We
It
talked
was,
about
it was late last week.
because you were starting on. We were starting on
Yeah.
the projections. We didn't. Whenever. I mean, we can. I can call him and we can get him out
You
whenever.
feel like you're ready that soon to have them back again?
we're just,
Yeah,
I mean, I
because-
think to get the question answered, I don't know that we're ready to dive in and start
Right,
with
right,
it
that's
right
what I
away. But
meant.
I
I
think
mean-
to at least say, can you do this or not? This is our. This is
Great.
our scenario. This
It was
is our
mostly
little.
focused on the whole wage situation, just because the teachers, like Danielle said, the contract is. I mean, we were going through stuff. I'm like, well, I don't understand how this is budgeted, but now it's this. Well, that's because this teacher got an increase because they moved a step.
Right.
Oh, well, that's just. And that model, basically, what you said was like, we'll put 4% in increase. Well, that's not the case for your biggest piece of the wage pie. It's such a moving target. And we need to be able to talk to him to make sure that it can handle what we want to do. I mean, yeah, great, putting 4% in, yeah, that's terrific, but it's just more than that.
you're talking about customizing the model, and so
Yes.
that's what
Or
we
does
need
the
to
model
do.
those,
And
that
so
logic?
that's the question we need to
Because
ask
from
him.
what I saw for salaries, you could say, okay, the 120 are your teachers. Increase it by this percentage. Well, that doesn't work for us for that group. For the aides, yes. Right now, their contract was a certain percentage. For administrators, great. But like Mark said, for our biggest pot of salaries,
Right.
what's
He showed us something there, though. I kind of remember.
Well, and just from my own mechanics of doing models,
There that-
you can, I think you can, it is something you can create. I mean, you can set up the model to do that where you just input things and you can literally, import that data from whatever other system is in,
Right.
and then it will push through again. It's a question of updating it every day. I mean, you can do it with stocks, you can do it with all kinds of different things, but the question is, do they have the capacity to do that? And if they can, then we need to show them what our needs are and go
right.
from
And
there.
I mean,
So-
the perfect thing would be if we could somehow download. Let's just say we have all the current teachers on their step this year. If we could download that in there, and then we know what the matrix is for the next couple of years, that would solve. If it could push it out somehow, rather than just the percentage, which we can use for the other groups.
Yeah, no, you're
but-
going to have to use different methodologies.
But that's what we need to
Yeah.
find out from him. Can we do that? Like I said, that's our biggest piece.
You're going to have separate spreadsheet files,
Right.
And quite frankly, you're going to need to be able to input that data maybe on a monthly basis, because as we see with every budget meeting, so-and-so replaces so-and-so, and so-and-so goes out here, and this person leaves, and this person comes in. So it's a constant
Even a maternity leave changes our
shifting,
budget.
salary, matrix that needs to be attended to. And it has to be automated. It has to be automated. You can't do that manually through 200 and some odd teachers every month, have somebody tediously going through that or once a quarter. And after, if you're not updating it on a regular basis, then it becomes a monumental task, because now you're coming back and saying, oh my God, we haven't touched this in 9 months.
Right.
We got to go through and change everything.
It's like doing a new model.
So you want to be able to just import the data on a, whatever it is, monthly or daily basis, and it does it automatically for you, you know? And so, yeah, I'd say call a guy up, get him come back out. You guys meet with him, talk about your needs and see what they can do. And we go from there and, you know, I guess schedule it for sometime in February, and we can talk about it at the next board meeting and see what, or next committee meeting and see what you guys thought. Okay?
1997.
What?
It was money. It was Devin.
1997.
Devin,
Okay,
that's
so
it.
that was a
The guy's
while.
name was, the guy's name was, I'm sorry, thank God for Google, John Black.
Okay, so moving on, have you guys looked into any ideas for perhaps refinancing the transition house?
I have a question. What, we own it,
Yes.
Correct.
so what are you trying to do, take a mortgage against it?
Yeah.
Borrow against it?
We have 100% equity on it.
Yeah, I know, but I guess if we borrow from it, is the bank gonna allow us to use it for the general fund then? Or won't they only allow you to borrow money to use something on the house?
What bank?
Any bank. I mean, if you go to a bank and say, I want to borrow, say it's worth $200,000, you want to borrow $200,000, won't they make you put the money into the house?
No. Why would they?
What
It's
kind
like a
of-
home equity loan. You can do whatever you want with the
You
money.
go on vacation with it, right? If it was your house.
But-
That was your home.
but-
I'm just asking.
If we take an asset and, quote, I guess we're liquidating it in a sense.
Well,
Yeah, you're borrowing against it.
you're borrowing against it, so you're refinancing. You're going to leave some equity in there, and you're basically the bank is going to, now you have a mortgage, so the bank is holding that asset as security, and also the credit rating of the school district as security that they're going to get repaid on their loan. The advantage is, well, one, my only suggestion would be that given interest rates where they are now, that's the reason why I would suggest it, is because you're literally getting money for nothing. It's a cash infusion that we may need to bridge some issues for this year and next year, which would be helpful to get us on the other side of the teacher's contract, which ends in 2015. So we have this budget we're working on and one more budget, and then we're beyond that
But
contract.
what do you think you get? Most you get.
Well, let's say you can get $150,000 for it. Okay, I'm just saying, what if? And
yeah.
at 3%,
245.
and if you know, and at 3%, you know,
Oh, I know.
your monthly payments would probably be less than the revenue that we're getting from there. So
No,
it's,
I'm not disagreeing with you. I'm just saying, you know, I would just make sure you have no prepayment clause in there. Sometimes when you prepay, you're back. Well, you could just go on a credit. You wouldn't even have to go get a mortgage, right? Just go borrow against
So what
it.
do? You sell it and you pay your loan back?
you don't have to
No, you don't
sell
sell
it.
it.
You can either pay the
Just go-
loan back when you had the funds,
Go get a home
or you
equity.
can make monthly payments over time.
Oh, so in other words, just like you do take a lien against your own mortgage.
Yeah, but it's not a mortgage. It's
There's
a-
no
it's a
mortgage.
bar.
You own the
It's just a
property.
bar. It's a line of credit. It's just.
It's a line of, when he said line of credit, then I got
Well,
it
I mean,
instantly.
All I'm suggesting is, as
Because I have
opposed
a home
to,
equity loan, I get
as
that
opposed
now.
to taking, you know, we want to make sure that you know, you may want to cap it at whatever the revenues are that we're getting for the transition house from the Y or Berks, you know, the
I think
BCIU.
it's 12,000.
So, you know, if it's $1,000 a
It's
month,
1,000 a
So then
month.
you can go more. Yeah, you don't borrow any more.
you're not going to borrow any more than like $120,000 or $140,000 in the house, and then you're done. So,
Correct.
but the difference is, if we need that $120,000
Correct.
to save a program that people feel passionate about, well, at least you saved it for one more
Well,
year and
here's
bought
what you
yourself
do.
some time to come up with a solution the following year.
Set up a line of credit, but then just don't use it.
We can use as much or as little as you want,
Correct.
but I'm just saying,
Set up a line of credit for like.
Would we, I wonder if there,
$200,000.
well, I have to check then.
If
So I
you-
understand it now, I didn't
You set
understand
up
it
for
before.
$200,000 in June. You say you need 100,000.
Do we as a,
the only difference is with a line of credit, the rate may be higher versus actually
but do
getting
we
a
as,
mortgage on the house.
do we as a school district
Yeah, but
have
then
certain
you're not-
limitations
In
for
terms
doing
of
that?
payback,
that?
maybe a lot quicker too, a line of credit.
Brian?
That's true.
Which is probably good though.
The only thing we have to find out is if we
As long
have,
as we're ready to
since
pay.
we're not
Well, you
an
might be
individual
able to, you
homeowner,
know.
What?
since we're a
don't want
nonprofit
third-
corporation.
Doesn't matter what you
No,
are.
right.
You're sure?
Yeah.
Okay.
My only thing is I don't want to take out a 30-year mortgage.
It's real estate. It's not. Don't think of it as a home. It's real estate.
Yeah, I just don't want to take a 30-year mortgage out.
1 second, Shane.
That's my only concern.
We'll
You know,
start-
about 30 years.
Or-
Unless you can pay it back or there's no penalty, then fine.
Well, look, you can go out right now and get like 2.9% financing on a 15-year,
So
note. So
I'm doing it now.
that's,
For property.
you know, That's less than the historical rate of inflation, for crying out loud.
So it becomes a revenue generator in the sense that it's a line of credit.
It's not, I wouldn't say
It's a
revenue
cash
generator.
infusion For 1 year.
It's a
But you
one
wouldn't
shot.
want to-
One year cash
You wouldn't
infusion.
want to actually take possession of that revenue till July 1, basically.
If you need it.
Right.
Yeah, you could take possession of it whenever you wanted to.
If you set it up and
Well,
don't actually pull
if
the
you want to
trigger on
put it in as revenue for next year, it would be July 1. If you would refinance now and get the cash,
You
and
would
when
do
you
it
put
now.
it in as revenue, it would fall to fund balance.
Yeah, but you don't need it this year, so why would you do it? It's just a bridge. In other words, if we're down
He's
to
talking about if it's a line of credit. We're saying two different things. If it's a line of credit, and let's say you get a line of credit for $150,000, but you don't tap it, so there is no revenue. You've got $150,000 worth of credit, but maybe you wait until July or August or whenever you need it to start pulling that 150.
That's what I
You
would
don't
do.
have it in your hand.
We would need it the June
As
of
opposed to a
14.
mortgage where you're taking 150 in cash.
We wouldn't
Yes,
need it right
or-
away.
or
We would need it.
July of
Somewhere in 13,
whatever.
14.
But you have all that paperwork with the bank that when you call up and say, okay, I need $200,000, you don't have to go through the process. They just
But where are
money in
you?
the account.
Where are you on? Think of budget though. Where are you budget? You're trying to
It's
use,
a
use
debt.
that
It's
to
a
bridge
debt.
the gap.
It's
a debt.
It's a debt.
$150,000 debt.
You're adding $200,000 to your fund balance, and you're adding $200,000 as a liability. You see what I'm saying? So
But you're not adding it to your fund balance unless you actually take possession of it.
that's
correct. We're not with all the debt unless you take
But
possession.
quite frankly, as a board, though, I guess what I'm suggesting is we may get to a point where we got to make some very difficult decisions, and there may not be an opportunity to compromise, and we're looking for additional revenue. So we're going to go to the fund balance, and fund balance is a finite amount of money. So somebody can say, well, okay, we just increased fund balance by $200,000 because we're going to tap this line of credit. Okay, our liabilities went by $200,000, and we realize this is a one-shot deal, and here we
It
go.
wouldn't hurt to have it in place that you do need it. If you're down to X program and it costs $50,000, and there's no other way the board can figure it out, we go, okay, you know what? We're going to take that $50,000.
So that
But
would,
then that way you have it in place with the bank, with any institution, so that you don't go 30 or 60 days to go through all the paperwork, all the gyrations, all the paperwork signed. We have to go through board approval. We have to put it on the agenda because then we're taking out a possible loan. It's just that you have all that in place, and if we pull the trigger, we don't. If we don't,
but then we have to tell the IU they're out.
No.
no.
So they can still stay.
Yeah, we want them
You're
to
not
stay because they're
selling.
going to
It's
pay.
not like
We're
we're
not selling
selling
it.
the property. You're refinancing.
Okay, I got you.
it.
We're just refinancing.
You're, I don't know.
I got it now.
You want to go on a
Okay.
cruise?
The
So,
light just went on.
are you going to check with Brian just to make sure we don't
Yeah,
have
check
any
the lease
I just
out.
wanted to understand the concept.
anything?
Hey,
like
look,
we
all you're
could-
doing is you're replacing equity with debt.
Yeah.
So in other words, the IU's paying our debt for us.
That's exactly right.
We just
I
don't
got
want a
it.
mortgage
Okay, you have
payment more
down,
than
like Andrew said, you have a
$1,000
program
I get it.
X,
I get it now.
and we're down to June 28th, and we're down to like, okay, it's $50,000 to save it. Okay, the only way to do is, okay, bank, put the $50,000 in our account.
I mean,
July 1st, it's saved.
it's like, I mean, you have that asset. It's debt free. So, I'm not saying get rid of the asset. I'm just saying is monetize it, right? And so
Correct.
that's all you're doing. And
Concerning
it's
Is it like remortgaging it? Is that the same concept?
Exactly it. Exactly.
Exactly.
I guess
Now
you
you
could call
decide to
it
do
that.
it.
Never had a mortgage to begin with, but
am I hearing the finance committee looking more to like the line of credit?
I've explored both
Well,
options.
I know,
So it's line
understand it
of
now.
credit versus
I would prefer,
refinancing.
first of all, I do the line of credit because you can pull the trigger at any time, and two is you usually can pay them back without prepayment, and two, you're not locked in for 30 years. So next year, if we see an influx of whatever, and we have $50,000, we
Take it
pay
off our books.
$30,000. Or we see all of a sudden at the end of next year, we see our fund balance going up $50,000, and we have a debt of $40,000. Instead of taking it in the general
Yeah,
fund, pay
there's a
something
few
else.
other things that might come into play, like
Yeah.
with the line of credit, you may not have to pay some fees that
You
you
only
would
pay
with the
interest.
mortgage. You don't
And
have
you
to
only pay
make some
interest
closing
every
you might have to do title. You may not, certain
have to
closing
figure-
costs that you would avoid.
You don't have to do more, you probably won't have to have it appraised if you do a line of credit.
You'd have to get that data from a bank.
If
Okay,
you
what if
do-
I took a line of credit out, or what if I took a mortgage out?
Then you're going to have to have an appraisal done,
What-
which would be
what's
a
the
couple
deal?
$1,000, or a couple
No,
$100.
it'd be $300. I mean,
Whatever.
your closing costs. The biggest part of your closing costs would be title insurance,
Correct.
which would be on that size
But
of
then we
house,
got to put it before the
$1,500.
board. All that stuff has to be poured. We have to sign it. Andrew has to sign the paperwork, so all that kind.
Well,
You just get all that in place.
just get
So in case you
both
don't do it,
options.
as you do it.
Understood.
It's just looking a
I'll
little bit
contact
ahead.
one bank,
Yeah, if you don't
and then
use
I'll
it,
start contacting the others with the same,
Yeah.
after we,
yeah.
I get it now. I wasn't conceptually
I have a
grasping
line of
this
credit at
before.
work. Sometimes we use it, sometimes we don't. And like Andrew said, it's cheap money.
Extremely cheap money.
It is really
Go ahead, Shane. You had a question.
If you go with a 30-year mortgage, for every $100,000 you borrow, and if there's just say you get a 1% loan, your interest and principal would be $100. So if you would borrow $300,000 at 3% interest, that would be $900 a month payment. So it's easier to figure it out that way.
Yeah.
If you're at 9% at 100,000, then it's $900 a month payment. So you can actually borrow a lot right now.
That's my point, is that you could probably borrow up to, you know,
More than
if
the
we're going to
value
use
of the home.
$12,000 as a cap on an annual expenditure, you could probably borrow up to, I don't know, at 3%, you're probably borrowing up to $160,000
So
or
am I
something like
going
that.
out to
So,
them with
You can
an
actually borrow a lot
amount,
more.
or
No.
no?
No.
no, I would just say, well, you could just, I can tell you what we could do. I mean, I got an amortization
Well,
schedule.
no, I mean, I'm not trying to be smart.
No,
I'm
no.
just like, if I'm going to contact them and get information.
Round off. We bought it for what? 240.
245.
Okay, we went $200,000. Round off. Go high. You might not ever use it.
I mean, the bank will probably give you the line of credit because there's other assets they could probably.
Yeah,
Talk
exactly.
about putting into play if it's a line
Correct,
of credit.
that's what I'm saying.
It's
So
not
go
just a house. If you
$20,000.
mortgage it, you're mortgaging just that house.
Correct.
But if it's a line of credit, they're going to say, well, what assets do you have?
I think politically, my thing of just using that at the house was, I mean, if it's a line of credit, they're going to go in the credit worthiness of the school district and its ability to tax, and so, you know, I'm sure they'll give us as much as we want. My whole thing with using the house was
That's fine.
for the benefit of the public to say, hey, look,
Right.
we're not incurring more debt than, and
We're
our debt
using our
service
assets. Fine,
hasn't increased by more than what our revenue
That's
is.
fine.
We are covering the cost of this loan should we need it. And
As long as you don't, as long as for some reason things turn around in 3 years and you have a 30-year mortgage, you can pay it off with no penalty. That's fine, and they might do that. That's my only concern.
or if we decide you're going to sell the asset, you pay it off then too.
Yeah, true.
I
That's
mean,
what
I
I'm
just
saying.
didn't know when I call, I'm sorry, I've never done it. I just have my original mortgage, so I don't know. If I call, do I have to say I'm looking at trying to get a line of credit for this amount or for this house, or do I just
Start with the house, because that
Start
kind of
with
gives
the
you a
house.
basis. You say, hey, look, we have this asset. It's a single family, you know, 1-story house. We bought it for $240. We're looking to either pull a line of credit or
Okay.
Who would you go to?
refinance it. And what kind of terms and rates can you give us? And you know, what's the maximum amount of dollars
Only
you give us
20
for that
banks.
asset?
Wait, who would you go to?
First, I would probably start with this.
Okay, don't worry. I'll make the call for you. I have to deal with something. I'm doing it for a property that we own at work. I have a lending officer. I will explain to him that he can call you.
Go to Fulton. Go to
I'm
this.
assuming
go to-
That's
I
where
will-
I was going
I
to
will-
start
I-
first, just because that's
I will-
our district
correct, but
bank
I-
right now, and then I was going to
If everybody's okay in the room, I have a lending officer I'm dealing with where at work. I will tell him what we're looking at doing, and then I'll call you, and that's all I'm going to do. Just bridge that gap. And he might not be the one that would do it then here, but I'm dealing with him, and
And they might be able to advise us on creative solutions
Correct.
as well.
Correct. So again, I put a phone call into him on another matter today, so I'll put the bug in his ear, Daniel, and give him your name and phone number.
Okay.
and then Mark and I can actually tag
And you
to
should
different
easily
banks,
get.
so.
You should
Yeah.
easily get.
I mean, I think New Penn Financial right now it's like 2 point.
What is
New
it?
Penn Financial is one. There's another one.
Where's New Penn?
Can you take a loan for more than the
Philadelphia.
value of the property?
No, typically you could. Most banks wouldn't do that because they're using
You
the
could-
asset as
hey,
security.
You could
You-
5 years ago.
Yeah,
but not
yeah, that's for
anymore.
sure.
You can't. But
Well, I'm just thinking if the money's cheap.
This will. I'll talk to you.
The other one's like Garden State, something or other. Who's another one I was just talking to? Garden State. They're out Cherry Hill. They're doing, I think like 3.25 on 30-year and 2.75 on 15-year fixed.
Yeah.
It's outrageously low. All right, so you guys will jump on that. Switching gears, one other thing that came up during the policy committee meeting, and I made a note for myself. It's not on the agenda here, but we were talking about an issue that came up with homeschool kids that want to participate in a class or an activity here, and what do we charge them? And Bill McElmore was sort of running through some machinations on different ways to come up with a fee for those things. And he said, well, we just take whatever the cost of the teacher is for that particular hour and divide it by the number of students, and that's the cost. And I think he came up with one thing was like $56 for one activity, and another one was like $1,200. And I said, well, maybe you ought to look at it a little bit differently, and we can talk about it here, what the best path forward would be, but I think you need to include all of our overhead, our debt, our facilities expenses, all those types of things as part of that, because to educate a child in a classroom, you have to have the classroom to begin with. You have to have the musical equipment or the computers or whatever else goes along with it. And so part of that is the debt that we carry and all of our other overhead. Administrative, custodial, all those other types of things need to be built into that formula. One way of looking at it would be, do you take what the state gives us in terms of a reimbursement or what our total costs are in terms of educating one child for an entire year, and say, okay, well, if the state reimburses us, what is it, $10,000 a year?
Round it up.
And, a student takes 8 courses, divide 10,000 by 8, and that's the number you charge. Or if it costs us $14,000 to educate a child, that's our true cost. Divide that by 8 classes, if that's how many classes a kid takes in a given day or a year, then that's the cost. Or actually calculate the true cost of that class or that activity. Okay, it's a math teacher, what's the cost for the salaries and benefits for that particular teacher? What's our overhead? And you have to figure out what our overhead cost is per teacher. So figure out what everything else in the school district costs aside from salaries and benefits for teachers, and then divide that by the number of teachers in the school district, and you're going to get a rough number per teacher what our overhead costs might be, or per class, or there's lots of different ways to do the model. But I think what we need to discuss is what makes sense to charge a student. I mean, my God, if we're only going to charge somebody $50 to take tuba lessons for an entire year, I'm pulling my kids out of school and I'm going to educate them at home and send them,
Is this homeschool?
This was homeschool.
Okay.
It came up, there was a policy that we can.
have one for the
By the way,
athletics, which is
well,
kind of what Bill and I,
I'm aware of it.
which is kind of what Bill and I,
I'm not disagreeing with what you're saying,
Right,
I'm just letting you know,
There was a big article in the paper about
Wilson
this.
just said they're not going to charge anything.
Well, good
And
for
I'm not,
Wilson.
I'm not saying you should. I'm just saying, I wonder why they do
Berkshire
that.
Mall.
Yeah, I know, but geez, why would they?
I mean, they've got enough. Maybe they got money coming out the wazoo. I don't know.
No, I'm not disagreeing with what you're saying. I'm just saying I agree. If
second.
you're going to have somebody do it, sure, charge them. Why would
I think a good place to start is with a reimbursement factor that we get, because for the thing, there's a differentiation you have to make here. First of all, the cyber school students that go out and want to come back and take a class, we already have the cyber/charter school kids. We have a policy in place that says if you come back here, we can charge you kind of a prevailing rate. We have a little formula on a piece of it. It's actually in policy.
no, it's for the sports.
For sports, that's correct. I'm sorry.
And that's where Mr.
But we've also been
McElroy and
using
I
that, we were trying to use that model for academics as
Loosely.
well.
Correct, because
loosely.
we didn't have one, which is.
Now,
I think,
homeschool
good if we get
students,
one.
we
It's
have-
something to
Hold on a
follow.
second. Does that formula that's being used, does that include our overhead?
No, if you look at, no.
Yeah.
It's salaries, benefits, travel, it's whatever that's.
it was a policy that
budget.
Yeah.
Mr. Fiddler suggested on his way out when he was getting
Well,
off the
maybe
board.
we ought to include. I mean, they're not playing on a field that didn't cost us anything. So, or in a weight room or some other thing that didn't cost us anything. We do have a substantial amount of debt that needs to be included, I think, in that formula expression. So, but for that debt, we wouldn't have those facilities that these people are playing on. So I think, look, like any business, if I charge out an hourly rate for my services, that for sure is going to include overhead, not just my direct costs. It's going to, it's going to include some fixed overhead costs as part of that equation as well, and on top of profit. And I'm not saying we have to make a profit, but we certainly should be covering our overhead. So just give it some thought.
Well, the other thing,
And I'm open to suggestions.
well, in light of the article that he mentioned with Wilson, there's a little bit of emphasis now in the press right now on charging homeschool students. The difference between a homeschooled student is that they're and I don't say only in a bad way, they're only a resident. Cyber school students, charter school students are district enrollees, i.e., we get money for them. Homeschool students are not on our rolls, so their revenue that they bring into a district for us from the state is non-existent. They don't reimburse us for homeschooled students. So if we have a homeschooled child who is not affiliated with a charter school and they want to come into the district, we have traditionally not charged them anything to come in and do that. We've had 2 or 3 of them since I've been here. and maybe 2 or 3 or 4 in the last decade. They kind of get a pass, and they get in the door. We don't have to allow that to happen, but we do. So that's another conversation that you may want to factor into this.
So what I'm saying is, so then Wilson, again, I'm not trying to compare us to Wilson, they
Right.
paid a policy saying they're not gonna charge. That's what you're saying. And
We don't either.
that's what I'm saying. but
We
saw the
already
policy.
don't. We just don't.
We
For
saw the policy.
homeschool.
For homeschool.
For
Well, that's
homeschool.
paid, so do they.
Well, I mean, I
That's
can
it.
understand that homeschool, you pay real estate taxes to the school district, but you derive no benefit from the school district.
Correct.
Right? So you
Correct.
are paying in, but you're not receiving
Correct.
any services. So to send your kid, if you've been paying, I don't know, $3,000 a year in real estate taxes, to send your kid to the school for one class, maybe that's a wash. But I think you ought to have that formulaic expression in there and say, well, okay, well, maybe if you're taking, I don't know, 4 classes.
Well, no, what it says is, as long as, basically our policy says, in essence, as long as, if our classes are too big, or it's going to result in us, in
Right.
the occurrence, we have the right then to say, no, you can't come in and do
I have
it.
a question. Is there a limited number? What if
No,
they,
there-
what if they 5 classes, basically they're enrolled in school?
It's all,
I'm just asking. I
yeah.
mean, was there a number
That's-
that you limit?
No,
the
our
whole-
policy's loose. It
Okay.
really is. It's
Well,
not very prescriptive.
Policy committee.
Well, that policy's coming up.
No, I'm just asking. But I'm just saying is if they end up taking 5 classes, aren't they just technically enrolled?
The only, in a sense, yes. And then I do believe there is also a mechanism whereby if a student who is homeschooled, you can actually put them on your roll and get some reimbursement for them and count them in attendance.
And if they do more
If they do more than 1 or 2.
class, okay.
But that's probably pennies on the dollar for what it costs to educate them.
Just asking a question.
It's kind of a gray area.
Okay.
I don't know what spurred that article, but they interviewed us and we just told them what we're doing. So it's not.
What do you mean?
I don't know what. Well, I didn't get it. Wasn't quoted.
No,
They
no.
handed
I
out the
just
bill.
was curious. Okay.
But when Wilson said they made this big pronouncement that Wilson's not going to charge anybody for homeschooling, nobody does that I'm aware of. Not for homeschooling.
I know.
For
I said-
cyber charter
No,
schools,
no.
they
It says
do.
homeschool. It
But we
does say-
charge for athletics for homeschool.
And we actually.
Is it-
No,
that's-
you're not allowed to.
No, not for homeschool.
Actually, in 2006, a regulation was passed by the governor and by PDE that said you can't.
That's because,
You absolutely
that's because
cannot.
that's like their Fed, their Zed,
Yeah.
and everything else. So,
Okay,
and that,
so-
like you said, they don't pay taxes.
Right, currently, we don't charge homeschool kids for
Anything.
For anything.
For
And
anything.
cyber charter, we charge for athletics.
And for the few, we've had now some requests this year, and we've tried to come up with an on-the-fly formula, because we haven't dealt with it before, to say, if you want to take an algebra class, because your cyber school's weak in that area, you want to come to us for that. We don't want to deny them the opportunity, but we're saying, wait a minute, we're sending $9,000 out, now you're coming back? Some of your money's coming back then, too. And you're allowed to do that. The state actually says you can do
So
that.
you are charging them a fee.
That's where the whole
Well,
lesson thing
that's-
came into play.
Exactly.
The Trump-
That's where, right, we're coming full circle to the conversation.
Right. That's where that whole
This
conversation.
one family wanted to
Somebody
have their
was coming
kid come in for the pull-out band program.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
And then Bill tried to compute a cost for it,
And he
because
put like 50
I said to him, I said, let's work out a deal, because the cyber
And then
school
there was
will pay
another one
us.
that came out to
Wait,
be
wait,
Well, yeah, he said like $50, and I said, wait a minute, is that an hour, or is that?
$50
Yeah.
for that. When we charge to join marching band, we charge a kid $75.
It had to do with the
We charge our own kids
calculation.
It had to do with the
$75 a month.
calculate. Look, it just had to do with the calculation of being used. I was stunned because I said, "Wait a minute, was it $59 an
It was a
hour
good
or
deal.
$59 for the entire year?" And he
It was
goes,
a
"No,
good
for the
deal.
entire year." I said, "Okay, that we gotta
Wow.
revisit that one." So,
yeah, I don't think so.
But don't get the impression, we don't have
No, I
this slew of
understand.
kids
No,
coming
I
here
didn't say you did.
from
I'm saying-
cyber.
but yeah,
and
no, but I think,
charter.
look, as cyber schools become more and more prevalent,
It's gonna become a bigger
parents begin to
question.
find that they don't meet all the needs that they thought they would,
They're going to be coming back.
you're going to find
Correct.
a handful of kids every year are going to come back
Correct.
and want to take some classes or participate in some sort of
Middle school.
extracurricular activity at the public schools. So, just
The rate that we pay them is charter school, rather than.
And there's a lot of
rates
that,
we
Andrew,
get
especially when you're applying for
reimbursed from the
colleges
state.
and stuff.
right.
Not all the cyber stuff's out there.
Right.
So I think they need. Look, we just need to.
You know,
I guess my direction to you guys would be think of a way to come up with a formula that incorporates more than just our direct variable costs, includes some of the fixed asset costs that we have here in the school district.
Well, that's right. That was our take away from the policy.
Yeah. And so that, our debt and our facilities costs, and our heating and energy and, custodial costs, all those other things are somehow being captured in an hourly rate or in a per class rate or some other type of rate.
You have to come up with a flat fee.
There's just a
A flat
minimum
fee.
that is all our facilities
Right.
costs. At a minimum, this is where it starts.
Like a user
And
fee
that covers
attached
our
to it.
facilities costs, or whatever other costs there are.
Yeah, and if you figure, I don't know, use the reimbursement rate or what our true cost per student
Right.
rate is. You get whatever it is, 3,500 students. Our total costs are $50 million. Divide one by the other, and there's your per student cost. How many classes does a student take in a given year, and then divide it by that number, and there it is per class.
Well, you could compute it
That
per
would be one way
capita.
to do it. Say, hey, look, for us to teach that one class per student, it costs us X number of dollars. There it is. It captures it all. That may be an outrageous number, and if it's an outrageous number, we got to do some other formula. I mean, if it's $4,000 or I don't know, $5,000 for a class, no one's going to take the damn class. So we got to think of a different way to skin the cat. But all right, Shane, you had a comment. Sorry, I didn't
I
want to.
I was going to ask about partial enrollment. Do they do a partial enrollment where you would get reimbursement from?
I think you can just, for one class, you can actually submit their name to the state, as long as you can prove they were in the class.
And do they?
But what I'm saying
there
is
calculation on.
let's say you're worth $9,000 to me because you walk through the door. If you're going to, and that's based on 990 hours of instruction, and you start dividing the minutes. So you can actually break it down to a per minute cost. If you're only with me 45 minutes a day for 180 days, you can see it's only going to be a fractional reimbursement that I would get for you for being there from the state. But it's something. It's better than nothing. But that's how you would wind up computing it. They have a formula that they use to compute a student's reimbursement. It's number of days times number of, it's a multifactorial formula that derives that when you hear us say we get about $9,500 per student back from the state. They don't just make it up. They have some very, very strange formula for how they do it. We might be able to borrow that formula as a way
There's
to...
no cost of goods calculated in there, though. That's the issue. Right? Like,
The
if I take a certain
reimbursement-
class, if I take like the way you're trying to calculate it, and divide it by hours of
Right.
instructional time. If I take a certain class that requires I just show up in gym shorts and do jumping jacks, that's a lot different than if I take another course where you need to get certain books for me. And certain,
Absolutely.
There's
The
you can't divide
reimbursement-
by number of hours you're in a
I don't think the
class.
reimbursement we get from the state was ever intended to cover the total cost. That's always how it works.
Yeah.
So when we say we're getting $9,000 back from the state for a student, well, I can tell you $9,000 probably doesn't cover the entire cost of that. Or our state reimbursement would be enough to pay would balance our budget, and it doesn't. So if you just take your formula and take 3,800 kids and divide by 50 million, well, there's your real cost per kid. I mean, that's the bottom line. I mean, is it equal for each one? Probably not, but on an averaged out basis, just do that simple math problem and you'd have what a total cost is. Because that automatically factors in everything. That
Yeah, I'm not saying that's
salaries.
the best way to do it.
No,
but-
I'm not suggesting that is either. Because that number would be number would be off the chart.
Debt
That would be about
payments in there.
what, $6,000, $7,000, $8,000 over the 9,000. Might be $15,000.
How many kids do we have?
Just round it up to 3,800. You're going to do a quick math problem.
It's $13,500 per
college
student
That's
per
college
year.
tuition.
And then how many classes do they take in a year?
Well, you would figure
6
Is
classes?
it
Well,
different for any?
Depends.
for-
At the high school level.
All right, what's the average number of classes?
Divide over the subject areas: reading, math, science, social studies, physical education, and some other electives. So I would say 6, 7 classes. 6
7?
is a good one.
6 and then will be higher. It's $2,200 a student per class.
That's prohibitive.
Okay, well, if it's 7,
I'd
it's
like to get that.
$1,900 a student. So, I don't know. I think if you end up somewhere around between $1,000 and $1,500 for a class, I don't think that's an unreasonable amount of money for an entire year of instruction.
That's community college rates, if you look at it in that
I
sense.
think we need to look at, there's something called actual instructional expense versus what our budget is. And I think that is what it costs. So I think if we
Yeah, but
can
we
find
still have-
that number divided by the number of students, that might make more sense than just the total budget.
But I think you still need to include some overhead, and our overhead is what's the cost to light the building, heat the building, provide a chalkboard, a
That's what I'm saying,
classroom,
there
a
needs to be some
computer.
fixed number there.
Well, I
to
think the
include
way you-
some sort of facilities cost.
When you calculate that by whatever the percentage of our budget is for all of those things, that's the percentage that we would tack on.
You can do it by a percentage. I'm not arguing one way or the other. I'm just saying you got to consider those variables when you're coming up with it, because but for those extra costs, you wouldn't have you'd be leasing some space somewhere to teach the kids, and
Right.
there's that cost then. So, all right, I think we've beaten that discussion to death. I don't really plan on being here all night discussing that, but I guess the last thing is. And maybe this is more informative, and I don't know whether the REC is sort of handling this, the Revenue Enhancement Committee, or maybe this committee can also help with that. I'm wrestling with this issue of extracurriculars, and the fact that those programs are on the table in terms of being cut, and how do we find an alternative source of financing to make those things self-sustainable and around and not part of the budget discussions going forward. So, and on the sports side, there's been a lot of discussions with the Amity Athletic Club and having them run more of our sports programs or all of our sports programs the same way they run lacrosse and tennis. And if that's the case, whereas administratively we would still need to have someone like Michelle Goss here and our trainer and the secretary to organize the games and have the right people on the field for all that type of stuff, and they'd still use our facilities. In terms of collecting fees and paying coaches and that sort of thing, that's all in the hands of Amity Athletics. That would take those costs out of the domain of the school district and put them directly in the public. I don't see an alternative way to do that in music. And so, I reached out to the Music Boosters president to ask them their thoughts and what plans they're making. But maybe here in this committee we can help in that process. So, I've asked the business office to start providing information as to what the costs are for these individual extracurricular programs. So that everybody knows what it costs to run that internally and what the different components of those programs are, be it salaries, benefits, transportation, materials, game fees, registrations, all the different costs that are associated with it. And hopefully collaboratively we can come up with some way to bridge that budget gap. I mean, we spend almost, $700,000 on extracurriculars. We draw in another 180 or 200.
No, yeah, about 200.
$200,000. So we have somewhere around a $450,000 gap in our budget, which has shown up on the as part of the solution for balancing the budget. $450,000 out of all those programs, almost half of all that is salaries and benefits. And
Well, let me interject. What we've done as a result of the conversations at the board level and at REC, I've reached out to Brian Subers to understand any legal implications to, because in a sense what we're looking to do is subcontract our sports program. So I've asked him to look into that.
I don't think we're legally allowed to do that with our contract.
I'm just using those words that might not
outsourcing might be the better way to do it.
Outsourcing, whatever you want to call it. So he's in the process of putting together his thoughts. I had Tom Hankel reach out to the PIAA, and he has had an initial conversation with the District 3 head of PIAA, and we're actually going to set up a phone conference that I want to be part of so that I can understand the implications of some of the things that we are at least suggesting. So I would caution going ahead too fast until we have had that I hope to have those conversations this week.
That's what I was going to ask, because now you're getting into
Title IX's an issue.
Correct. And I was going to say
PIAA sanctioning of the teams.
What about what is our exposure liability wise if something happens with one of the coaches and one of the kids? They're still our students, but then they're not.
Well, one thing that, and I know Mr. Henkel had
Well,
told me.
we've bridged these gaps with lacrosse and tennis.
No, we have nothing to do with lacrosse.
Well, or tennis, apparently,
They're-
but they
they're just
use our
clubs.
facilities. They are PIAA registered sports. They compete at the county and
But they can't win.
state level.
They
Sure.
can't- No, they can't win. Lacrosse cannot win like Berks County lacrosse champions. They cannot recognize.
Are you sure about that? Because I have
I'm
not
sure
heard
too.
anything from either the sports
No.
boosters or Amity AC indicating anything other than that, or from Goose. Michelle Goss.
When lacrosse was set up, because I was one of the ones who helped do it because we didn't have it. Look, there is a distinction between being a high school sport and being a club. All they're doing as a club is using the name Daniel Boone.
Yeah, PIAA made it
That's
clear
it.
with Mr. Henkel
We
today.
have nothing.
They will not sanction club-sponsored
In
sports.
fact, my question is, and I'm going to ask this: why are we even approving the lacrosse coach?
Well,
I don't
because
think
I
we
think we're
did
kind of
that.
learning.
I don't think we ever did that. That's not our responsibility.
No, I don't think we did.
But it's on
We
the
probably
agenda.
should have.
I don't think we should. We have nothing to do with it.
They're not our employees.
They're not our employees. That's what I'm trying to say. When all we did is all lacrosse is a sport using the name Daniel Boone. They are allowed to play in our league. In other words, it's a conduit to play the Wilsons, the Twin Valleys, and everybody else. But they cannot win district titles. They cannot. It's not PIAA sanctioned. I mean, there are certain things and rules. But we, as a district, as far as I remember, is we have no exposure to that team, no matter what happens. They don't use our.
The comment that the
Now,
gentleman.
the only thing we do allow
Go
them,
ahead.
you're right, Andrew, is to use our facilities for free, which we do. We could charge them if we wanted to, but other than that, we have no legal or anything else to do with lacrosse, tennis, ice hockey, and swimming. I think there's 4. I know there's a hockey team.
Well, I think they
No,
swim
nobody
for
knows
another
there's a
district. I think they're allowed to be sanctioned to swim by another district if you don't have it.
That's fine, but I know
That's a
there's
different rule.
There is a hockey club. There's a hockey team. There's a Daniel Boone hockey team.
Yeah, but we've never endorsed that.
I know that, but it's Daniel Boone kids. It's
That's
played with-
not, that we have
right?
never endorsed.
Right?
Yeah.
It plays at the Body Zone.
Do they? I don't know.
Absolutely.
Yeah, but
Absolutely.
they are not
And here's
connected
the
to
other
us
thing
in
is,
any way.
and again, you're right. This is why I
That's
said,
it right there,
and,
Pat.
Andrew, I'm not saying we shouldn't look into this, but now they're not under the sanctions of grades. Students can be failing and still play lacrosse. There's no ties to like grade
Eligibility.
eligibility requirements are gone. There's no, like I said, if something happens
Yeah,
to
he's only a volunteer,
since
but we
they
should probably take a
lacrosse,
look at
they
that.
take their own cars. If something happens, we're not held liability. Coach, molests a student. Nothing on us. We have nothing to do with it. We have no say. I
may
think the
still
only thing
have
we
to
can
do that
do
because
is
he's with
approve
our
their
kids.
coach, and that's maybe why we did the lacrosse one.
Well,
Other than that-
my point in bringing this up is
I'm not saying not look into it, but
But
if
we
our
are
options
looking
are
into it.
if our options are do nothing and have no program,
I agree with that.
or B, outsource it, so to speak, and the program, sports remain in the Daniel Boone School District, and there's an outlet for the kids to participate, then I want to go for option B.
I listen. I understand it, but we got to make sure legally you can do it all.
Well, even legally, I think we can do it. The question is, will they get the PIAA and all that other kind of stuff?
Correct.
I mean, quite frankly, if we don't do it anymore, these coaches aren't our employees anymore.
Correct.
And so they can get paid whatever the market pays them, whether it's their volunteers or they get paid some other number that makes that sport sustainable.
And then you gotta-
Let me say this. The comment that, and this is just a preliminary conversation because I asked Tom to go ahead and do this. PIAA said that they won't recognize coaches that aren't paid by the school district. They said they don't care where the money comes from, but the check's got to come from the Daniel Boone School District.
And then here's the other issue.
What does that
By
mean
not
by not
recognize-
recognize? Yeah, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
That's
What
it.
difference does it make whether they recognize a coach or
for
not?
any of the
As far as PIAA
for sanctions for
sponsoring them for
all that kind of
championships and
stuff.
things like that.
The other thing you got to be somewhat is that the
PIAA is worse than PD.
The first time
Am I right?
A parent
Yeah.
first time a parent pays for a sport and Johnny's on the bench, even though we have nothing to do with it, they're going to come to us. Meaning, and wait, what if they can only do baseball but not softball? Do we run into a
What do you
Title
mean?
IX?
They only do baseball.
In other words,
versus
Amity
softball?
takes over a baseball team, but they don't take over softball. They can't do it. Now, do we run into Title IX?
And
Yes,
then you'd
you
have to
will.
get rid of softball.
Yeah, but no, yeah, I know, but if they can't take it over, then do we have to provide it?
No, we can only provide what we can afford, right? So at the end of the day,
But what I'm
if we have a
saying is-
Title IX issue
but-
because
but
you have too many male sports versus female sports, then we got to jettison another male sport
all
to
I'm
make
saying
up
is
for it.
we
You
got-
can't
we got a lot
add.
of
Let me just
You got
get
a
the
lot of
questions
homework to do.
answered. Let me just get the questions answered. I've given it to
Well,
Brian.
I'm bringing it up here because, this has been on the table since early December, and time is going to go by very quickly. And I don't want to be sitting here in May and wondering how we're going to fund a sports program in September. So I think there needs to be a lot of urgency here. I think people need to start coming to the table with ideas. I think we need to start bird dogging all these open questions down as quickly as possible so that we have a plan A in place and maybe even a plan B in place should it become a reality where we have to cut these programs. And maybe the board is unwilling to do that, but there's got to be some other way to fund it. And I don't quite frankly see a way to fund it going forward unless A, we use more fund balance, B, our contractual partners come to the table and say, we're going to make some sort of concession, or C, the state comes to the rescue.
See, what you're, Mr. I'm not disagreeing with you, but I'm just saying is I want to make sure our ducks in a row and that we don't hurt any program, whether it be because of financially. So you're right.
The research is underway.
You're right. You got to start thinking now. It's already January.
The research, the questions
And
have already
as
been
opposed
posed.
to, I guess I'm just suggesting when PIA comes back and says, well, we're not going to do X, and that's just the way we're going to do it, I would press them, maybe that's just my nature. Why? Why not? Why aren't you going to do this? What happens if we have to get rid of the program because of this? What happens if 17 other school districts have to get rid of their programs because they got budget cuts? Then what is PIAA going to do? Have you guys started thinking about this? When does your board meet? Are you going to, can a motion be brought up to amend whatever your things are to allow us to continue to compete as a PIAA as a special exception to your rule? I mean, start asking additional questions so that it's not this ridiculous iterative process that takes 5 or 6 months to get to some sort of solution. I think we need to have a list of questions and then a follow-up question so that you can press them into a corner to give you an answer as to what they're willing to do and not willing to do, and so that we can close the door on some of these discussions and say, okay, well, that's no longer an option. Let's move on to this solution. Because what I don't have to do is, like we're having a conversation now,
Sure.
we come to the table and we got 15 questions, but we only got one answer.
Right.
And then we go to the next meeting 4 weeks later and we got another answer to 14 questions, and this goes on and on and on. And then I've been on this board long enough. I see how this works. We get to the end of the day, and then we haven't come up with a solution, and something the rubber hits the road, and people aren't going to be happy with the outcome. So,
Can I ask one other budget question?
please.
What do you have in for the classified staff increase?
I think you assumed the max, didn't
Do
you?
you want me to say that out loud because they're under negotiations?
Oh,
There you go. That's my question. No, do not say it out loud now.
There is a placeholder.
I would like, sorry, I would like to know that number.
I will certainly share that with you, but I
Thank you.
don't want to do it.
That's fine. I respect that, but
No, well, it's still.
no, that's my question. That's my question. Thank you.
That's
There is
that's
a
I
legal.
guess I was
That
going to ask you
falls
outside,
under negotiations.
but I'm assuming you did, but I want to know, would like to know what it is. Thank you. I'll wait till we're done discussion. Sorry.
I think I remember, but I'll confirm for you tomorrow when I look at my notes.
That's good. That was good on your feet there, Danielle.
Why is this any different than any other?
Sorry.
all right. Okay, so I mean, if nobody has any objections, I'm going to continue, whether it's part of this meeting or I'm going to try to help the Revenue Enhancement Committee push these sort of agendas along. But I want to continue as a board member, facilitate conversation with these outside groups to see if I can't get people on board with ideas. Because I think the only way the board is going to be able to make decisions on these things is if it's presented in a fashion that, hey, look, here are our options. A, do nothing. B, raise activity fees to this number to keep the thing. C, Amity AC takes this, that, the other thing, and we keep, or D, it's, you know what I mean?
Can I make one suggestion?
Yeah.
Either do it in this committee or the other one. I don't care which. Don't do it on your own because that'll get some board members probably upset. Two is make sure at least he's involved. As
I got no problem doing it any way anybody wants to do it, but
okay, I'm just letting you know. I would do it at their committee meetings. Do it at committee meetings.
my only concern is committee meetings happen only once a month.
Then do it. I don't know. At least have 2 other board members. You can have a meeting with 2 other board members. It doesn't have to be a scheduled one. You're having a meeting, call them up.
I just want to say that everybody's putting everything on the record.
No, I'm saying.
As we get the answers to these questions, it may beget other questions. I just want to be clear about that.
Well, that's true.
And the other part of this is, I don't think, I'm just going to say it, dealing with the PIAA, it's not a slam dunk. I'm just telling you, it's going to be, there's the Title IX, there's the contractual issue with the coaches, there's
Just do it in
the
committee.
liability.
Do it in the committee. Don't do it on your own.
I'm trying to anticipate every possible question. I've already done that with Brian. I had a discussion with him Tuesday morning. He's already researching it.
Right.
I'm going to have a conference call, hopefully by the end of the week, with a big wig from PIAA to say, look, this is kind of what we're looking at.
Just do it in the committee.
I'll have the answers. I'll have the answers that I can have as soon as possible.
Yeah, no, I'm not criticizing.
No, I'm not taking it as criticism.
Just be prepared with follow-up questions because it's too easy for somebody to just sit back and say no. I mean, that's the easy answer, right? No, we can't do that, or that's the way it's always been. And it's only that way because a group of people decided it was going to be that way. I mean, a group of people can decide to do something different. And it's a matter of encouraging them to start thinking out of the box and thinking of alternative solutions to our problem. We can't be the only school district facing this issue across the state of Pennsylvania. So
I don't disagree with anything you just said. So the wheels are in motion. We're pushing this as fast as we can.
I'm pretty sure, yes. But I'll confirm it for you tomorrow.
He's
sidebarring here.
Yes.
So yes, I hope to have answers, and if we can under old business, maybe if I have good answers, we can throw it on the table Monday with the whole board there.
Okay.
I mean, I don't think that's a bad place to do that, even though it's not a discussion meeting, but at least it's showing some due diligence to getting these questions answered so people understand where we stand, what we can and what we can't do. I just would caution the PIAA is not a very elastic organization.
all right. One thing that we were sort of discussing before you came in, Dr. Otto, was I had asked Danielle to give me some idea, sort of stratify the cost of the music program, and I'm trying to understand what is extracurricular versus what is program, and then what those costs are. And we were having,
Go ahead.
I think we're having a hard time understanding exactly what is extracurricular and what isn't. And so to the degree that when you get, somebody, I don't know whether it's at the high school, or it's Justin, or it's Mr. McElmoyle, or it's Mr. Hankel, somebody's got to sit down and kind of go through these spreadsheets and say, look, all this is extracurricular, and this is what the cost is for that. And this is program. And so when I'm looking at one of these spreadsheets and it says, I'm looking at this thing, and grand total stipends, benefits, additional expenditures, $136,000 for, that's everything, sorry. High school music. Band assistant, band front, band assistant, color guard, band assistant, percussion, high school instrumental director, marching band assistant, senior chorus and choral, high school winter guard director, high school guard instructor, high school percussion instructor, high school winter percussion director. Is that it?
I would probably leave the instrumental.
Where's jazz? Where's,
Do you not remember the conversation when you, Bill, Anne-Marie were in my office? Instrumental is jazz, marching, and something else?
Yeah, that's the only one. The rest
Orchestra.
I don't remember
No,
orchestra.
the stipend
I
is.
have it written down. It's in my book upstairs. I just can't think of what it is.
maybe you guys can just put in parentheses, this includes all these different things so that we know what's in and what's out.
90% of that's extracurricular.
Because if you're going to sit down with,
I don't think it is. Because the
Color guard's extracurricular.
Yeah, but all the choral stuff is
No. Color guard's extracurricular.
that's it. Color guard and indoor percussion.
No.
The stuff on here is in the extracurricular, in the teacher's contract under extracurricular. That's why there's a stipend.
Yeah, but
for it.
that's not necessarily.
I wouldn't know.
Yeah, because
I can
I don't
only
think-
tell you from what I know and how we pay it. It's in the teacher contract, and to me, that's all my extracurricular. If there's a part of that that is or isn't,
Anything
I
connected
can't
to the
know-
band
I don't know that. I don't know how to know that.
is any, like, band front, band, that's all extracurricular.
Yeah, but not the stuff that they do concerts at.
No, concerts is
Well,
part
that's
of
what I'm saying. So there is.
Concerts is part
so,
of
but
what?
I think in the
It's
one
part of the
list,
curriculum,
well, you
but
listed
they have a
salary, I think
performance
you listed
connected
marching
to
band
their-
and band director. Those are the same people, but they're one's extracurricular, one's not. I think.
well,
You need to get the right.
someone's got to sort it out. I can't sort it
Neither
out.
can I.
Danielle can't
Because
sort it out.
I don't think anybody can because I think
So-
it's always that we've been having that clouded line.
Someone's getting paid to teach
I
music at the school that's not a stipend, right?
That's right.
And so that same group of kids that are in that classroom are obviously doing these
Here's
concerts.
basically what you should do, in my opinion. Take all
Yes,
the band people at
to
high
answer
school,
your
take all the
question.
choral people at high school. This is their base salary based on their track. Anything that you add to their salary, that's extracurricular.
Okay, but then define the
Those
activity,
things,
which is
right.
what she's
Yeah,
done,
right.
but define that activity as well, because,
That's what I'm saying. You're paying them a stipend of $1,200. What's it for?
right, is that, what's
I
included,
don't
what
know.
isn't
That's what I'm saying.
included?
So it should be fairly easy
Probably
to
3
figure out,
concerts a year.
right?
I would have to
Yeah, I
go
guess
back
you're
and
right.
check.
If you just take, yeah,
If their base salary, if their base salary is $40,000, and they end up, yeah, if their base salary is $40,000, they end up getting $50,000. What are you paying the extra $10,000 for?
And that becomes your extra.
That's correct.
That's your extracurricular.
No, I'm sorry. What I told you before is correct.
Okay, but what I'm trying to say is that's what I would add. That's what I would try to find out, right?
Well, look, I'm trying to just get
I
a
agree
sense
with you,
of,
but that's what I'm saying.
and this is where we had the issue before, where, last year I think it was, when we were thinking about cutting one
Correct.
thing, and somebody said, well, no, that's not my job description.
correct.
I'm jettisoning whatever.
Correct.
When it really was part of their job
I know,
description.
I know what you're
So,
saying.
what I want to
That
make
was
sure
an
is,
arbitrary decision on that
But
person.
no, but I'm saying is, we need to define what's part of the salary job description and what is part of the stipend
Yeah,
description.
correct.
And let's get that on paper, because I want to know what is what. So when I'm sitting down with 2 or 3 other board members and we're sitting with the band boosters or some other organization, they say, what's the cost for this? I can say, it's this. And that's the nut we need to cover. And there's 17 kids in it, and right now they pay $175 or $150 to play that thing. It's not enough. So if you want it, you're going to have to figure out you need another X number of dollars to cover the cost.
Correct.
And either they can do it or they can't do it, and then, we move
Then
on.
you get
But
this, like I said, there's a cloudy line. Well, okay, it's program. Okay, that's fine. I mean, then they go, well, part of it's program and part of it's not. I mean, all that kind of stuff. So it should be very figure out. Here's your base salary. You got
I don't know
10 grand.
who are you going to have to do that? Is it Mr. McElmoyle? Is it
No.
Mr. Hankel?
Mr. Hankel and I will sit down.
Mr. McAdams? Get him in the
Yep.
Or you guys have to have that conversation before Mr. McAdams comes in. I don't know how you guys work it out, but the district
No, I
ought to be
think
defining what's part of the salary and what's part of the
Correct.
stipend, what's extra.
Correct.
And once we've defined that, then, because if something goes because of budget, there's going to be a certain expectation by the public and by this board that certain things are going to stay because that's still part of someone's salary. And we got to make sure everybody understands what that is now before it doesn't happen. Like as
No, I know what you're asking.
But again, it's for some reason music's always been
but-
like.
No, no,
like
I-
said, if you're
articulating this.
No, no, I know
teaching
what
at
you're
school and you're a wrestling coach, you know exactly what the stipend is, and you know exactly what if you cut wrestling, what they're going to cut, and that there'll still be a teacher, a history teacher, whatever during the day. That's always been that clouded.
And the reason I say this
right.
isn't a new conversation.
no, I know.
It's always been that way.
So that's why I get it. I know what you're
every year
asking.
we go through this.
Every year.
If we
Yeah,
get rid of
well,
that,
I
then-
can tell you that I know if you say, okay, we're not having senior choral anymore, I can give you an amount. But what that means, as in program-wise, I don't.
Yeah, so do they practice during the day or only at night? And they're going to tell you they do it during the day. Well, then that's program.
I would think so.
But that's not. That's
That
why-
may become a contractual issue as well.
Well, always a clouded line with music.
Well, I think we need to delineate that line.
Yeah, let's get
Well,
the-
I
Clearly.
agree. I'm not
Get the list
disagreeing.
together
I've been,
first, then we can work
like I
on
said,
the
let's
dollars.
get this.
Well, you can't even
music.
work on the dollars until you know what the list is. So,
That's true.
It's
but that-
music. It's something else.
well, I'm just saying, let's delineate what's what, so that everybody has a clear understanding going forward. What's program and what's
Well, what I just meant by that comment is if it's a
Well,
big
here's-
task, focus on the function, not on the dollars.
Right.
Don't say, well, this amount of dollars goes with this. Just get a list together of functionality.
Well-
And then from there, we'll tie the
And I hate,
dollars in.
you know,
It's frankly, it'll boil down to the job description.
Because here's
You
the-
have existing job descriptions for all this stuff.
Here's how clouded it is.
And I think from your, let me finish, from your job descriptions, you determine how you're compensating for that part of the job.
Yeah, but here's what
It's that simple.
here's what it's. And I'd like to know how. It's,
I mean, it is for me
You
anyway.
can,
I mean,
you can answer this. How was first period music handled this year? First period music was always marching band, which was amazing because that wasn't marching band. That's first period music. But when those kids took first period music, they were practicing the marching band stuff in the fall. Well, now our first period music teacher is no longer a band director. So what were they doing that first period?
Hopefully, music.
You know what I'm saying?
Well, there
Because
might have been
my
a whole
thing is-
schedule,
and that's
I don't
what-
know that.
There's a current board member, that's what his fight was. He wanted to play music, he didn't want to be in the marching band. And the point was, you either, and to get first period music, you had to be in the marching band, which we said no. So again, that's where it's always that clouded issue because there's a current board member, and that's why he was really mad. He wanted to play an instrument, he wanted to be in band, but he didn't want to be in marching band. But historically, first period was marching band. They practiced that music.
Well,
Now, this year,
remember the year before that the self-made rule was that you, in order to play an instrument, you had to be a marching band.
Yeah,
There was
exactly.
then we had to stop that.
Exactly. But my point is
Well, I
now,
think
that,
we
tamed
but
that
now,
type.
now that the
You were
person teaching
conscripted.
first period music,
I said you were conscripted.
but now the person teaching first period music isn't teaching marching band. So what do they do first period? I don't know.
we're going.
We're going, yeah.
I'm just asking the
So
question.
I guess what I want out of this meeting is
Cloudiness of
a
it.
delineation of extracurricular versus program, and then we'll associate costs accordingly. And I'd like to get that number sooner than later because I want to sit down with these groups and start having a conversation about, because the first question out from these outside groups is, how much are these programs going to cost? And, you know, I can't even give them that answer, so it's not even worth sitting down and having a conversation.
That's my job. I'll do that.
All right. All right. Is there anything else?
I'll break out all the job descriptions and we'll show them. But, well, yes, I know what to do.
Okay.
I'll just cut it off.
Any other? Hold it. Before I get to you, Shane. Any other comments from board members on anything? Okay, Shane, go ahead.
Did you consider going back to when you created the activity fee?
Yeah.
You had a group of the sports boosters, parents and stuff looking at it. Has the board considered?
Well, it wasn't just sports boosters. It was
Right.
teachers, board members, parents, boosters, people. I mean, like
Right.
it was a mosaic of the community was represented on that committee.
And they were talking about two different ways of doing it.
Yeah.
A flat rate or kind of like
A scaled
As you
rate.
go.
It was a scaled rate.
a scale.
Yeah.
At the one revenue enhancement meeting, I mean, there were sports parents here saying, we're getting a steal with what we're paying. I mean, they're spending hundreds and hundreds. They don't mind spending a little bit more. Maybe the school board should look at the scale again and see.
I know-
You have bowling, that doesn't cost a whole lot, and you have, football or softball or whatever.
Well,
costs
quite
it.
frankly, on a per student basis, our most expensive sport is like high school softball,
Right.
and then followed by middle school softball, and that's driven by stipends and benefits. So
But the comment that the parents were making
is we can pay more. Yeah.
But you know what?
No, they're saying the alternative is if you play this through, you guys are going to cut these programs. I still want my kid to go have these activities, and I'm going to pay 3 times, 4 times the. I'm going to pay a lot of money for that to happen.
Yeah.
So, why not? I'm willing to pay more to you guys because it's still going to be cheaper for me in the long run.
Right.
So that's when I did my whole spiel about, well, you can donate the money,
Well, the other thing
but we
is,
haven't got any checks yet.
no,
Yeah, I
the
know
other thing
it.
is maybe Shane is right. Maybe we, and this will take a long time, is maybe we go to the concept you do figure out per cost, and you want to play baseball, it costs you a little more than you want to play bowling.
Well, we
I'm
You
not
have your
saying-
150 or 75 or 100, your flat line as a base. So if you're in bowling and it only costs $35, there's still that everyone's
Correct.
still contributing. But then when you're up to $800 a student,
Correct.
maybe not charge them 800, but come down to like 400. I don't know the number,
Correct.
but for the real expensive sports,
Correct. You pay a little more.
and they said it in the meeting that, we're getting away cheap, and they don't mind spending more.
Look,
I said, well,
if
not
you were at the
everybody's
last,
that same thing.
there was a revenue enhancement meeting in January I was here for, and basically the discussion was, Monica said the same thing, Ms. Hamill. She said, look, we had people coming up saying, I'd be willing to pay $800 or $1,000 to have my kid play a particular sport, not just $150. I'm not saying that's the number, but clearly there's a willingness to pay the people, and we haven't reached that threshold. We also found out that in terms of the $500 cap, only 8 families in the entire school district hit that cap. You must be one of the 8. Well, at that meeting, there was 2 other people that hit the cap. So now I know 3 of the 8 that hit the cap. So that issue had come up.
we
I
thank
think
you.
I think the issue is one of
Want a soda?
there's going to be some alternative recommendations coming out of the Revenue Enhancement Committee meetings to the board about these programs. And one will be, hey, look, you can do nothing. The other one will be, we can raise the flat rate all the way around to cover the total nut, and here's the new flat rate cost. Or B, we've got to go to a scaled rate. So depending on which sport you play, it may cost more than another. Or, as you're suggesting, a hybrid of the two. There's lots of different ways to skin the cat. It's going to be the Revenue Enhancement Committee's job to bring all those alternatives forward. The other thing that we're looking at is, like I said, sort of outsourcing this to another organization to run where they wouldn't have the same costs that we do. And because they don't have to pay those costs, they could probably deliver those programs for a lot less money to the parent than we currently could on a per-student basis.
I have a question. If we do that, have you thought about leasing the facilities then?
Well, then what we were thinking about was because, for example, Amity AC was saying, look, we would prefer that you kept an athletic facilitator here and you need a trainer for the games and you need a secretary, whatever. And because somebody has to be scheduling all these games and doing all this stuff. And so there's that overhead then that we would have to incur. So what I said was, well, maybe we would charge you a leasing fee in addition to you guys running the sports. Now we would charge you a leasing fee instead of doing it for free, but that leasing fee would equate to whatever our total overhead cost was.
Yeah, because we got to maintain the fields.
Right. And so at the end of the day, I think it's $179,000 or something in total cost, somewhere around there.
I'm just asking.
And so if that's, Amity AC would have to build that into their cost that they're charging parents for that particular sport. Now that may be a question you need to ask then PIAA. Look, we may not have the coach, but we have an athletic facilitator there that's scheduling the games, and we have the trainer that we're paying, and all those things are coming out of our checkbook. And as a result, then, maybe that's a way to solve whatever that constraint is that PIAA is putting out there. I don't know, but certainly if we're paying for a facilitator and an athletic director and all those other things.
The reason why PIAA won't cover if it's a club is because there's baseball clubs, basketball clubs, and they can put a super team together. Kids from, best kid from Fleetwood, Twin Valley, Dandy Boone, put this dream team together.
That dominates the...
And just dominates the entire, sport. And then at the end of the year, they're going up through states, and so that's kind of why.
I understand the rationale.
On a fair playing level.
I got it. So, if we have certain constraints that, assure that students playing in NMA athletics are Daniel Boone students, and those are school-sanctioned clubs, then...
Yeah, and then again, you're right. Then you run into the problem where there are kids playing for MDC that don't go to Boone.
Well, that's what I'm saying, is if we make the caveat that if you're going to be using our name, you have to be a student of the school,
Yeah, that's fine.
then maybe that satisfies the PIAA concern, and we get around whatever that...
It's just one of them.
I'm just addressing one of them at a time. I'm just trying to think out of the box because I'm concerned about this. At the end of the day, it's going to be very difficult to balance this budget and keep a lot of the things that we want to keep.
Okay.
All right. Any other comments? Okay. Thank you. This meeting is adjourned at 8:35.